Well, last video looked lovely, didn't it? So, and I mentioned looking at some photos of some of the stuff I'd made for the car. So that's what we're going to do today. So we'll have a look on here and see what we've got. So yeah, we'll dim the lights and the magic lantern show. So to start with, this is nothing really to do with it, other than this is a lovely little design sketch that I saw out in Padova, and apparently it's done for a magazine, a period magazine. Thought that's a nice place to start. But as we move forwards, this is sort of what we started with. Yeah, it was sort of a dry build to start with, which was a bit more involved than we thought, because I didn't have all the bits, and I assumed all the bits were going to turn up at some point, which they didn't. Hence why we had to make so many bits. It's in the grey primer. The black stuff's what they call a guide coat, which is when you block them down, to rub them down, so you can see as you remove the black, you can see any high spots and so on, anywhere that needs remedial work. So that's how it came to me. The rolling chassis. You can see here it had some wheels on it. When it came in, it had the wrong tyres on it, some low profiles, so I swapped them out for some, the proper size, so because we needed the right size tyres on it to see what we're dealing with. Bit of suspension work, had to take the back axle out and put the anti-roll bar in because it hadn't been fitted, and you have to take the axle out to do that. So this is what we got. The engine was installed, although it had second-hand engine mounts in it, so I had to replace them. Steering box had been rebuilt. Various things have been done, but a lot of it needed sort of going through. So you can see, it's an attractive car even then. You're sort of quite excited. Yeah, excellent project, really excellent. I love these cars. So there you can see some of the stuff, brakes are off of it, got hubs off and so on that we're doing stuff on. So now we're into some of the stuff that was missing, because one thing I was alarmed by was that this car turned up, didn't have a prop shaft fitted, which means that even if you put it in gear, it's not connected to the back axle, which means that by putting it in gear, we can't use any sort of, as a handbrake or anything. As if you've got it connected up, at least then you can put it in gear and it stops it rolling around. Whereas we had nothing, and we had no handbrake fitted. So one of the early jobs was to get the handbrake sorted out. And it's that point that we realised we're missing the quadrant, the actual bit that goes on top of the axle. And we didn't have a handbrake cable. So we had a handbrake lever and the calipers, but the calipers needed some remedial work to get the adjusters right. Then we had to get a handbrake cable made, which isn't too bad. We can get them done, send it off to Speedy Cables, get them to do it. Actuator quadrant that sits on top of the differential on the back axle, all missing. Well, I managed to find some of it, but what we didn't have was this arm that we're looking at here. So this arm is sitting on top of that green piece of metal. That green piece of metal is a bit of the old yard gate that got scrapped, got pulled down and scrapped. And I've used that to make various things, so it's reasonably useful steel. It's of an age when steel was made well. So that's it. So I got the green stuff and I carved it out. So there you go, I've carved it out and milled it out to that shape. So we've got the beginnings of it, this sort of T section. Do these offsets, because the cable has to go through sort of a jaunty angle to enable it to go to either caliper, as it were. So here we are, so I'm milling it, so I've got it in the mill, I've got it on the vise, so I've tipped the vise up to the correct angle, and I'm boring through. We're effectively roughing it out. So here we are, we've got it there, it's roughed out. So I've got the pivot machined into it, I've got the thread here, which is for the adjuster, and I've got the bit here that allows for the collet for the outer cable to go in, and then the inner cable goes through it. So that's basically it. So that was that bit. This piece in black that I've had nicely powder coated, that's an original part. And then the silver bit, where it's not been coated or painted or treated yet, is the bit I've had to make. So that all had to be done. So there you can see, so it's identical looking really. That would have been a forging, I assume, rather than a casting by the looks of the shape of it. So in steel, it's as strong as that, or near as, damn it, sort of thing. Good enough for what we're doing. I don't think that's a casting. I think that was a forging. I would have thought a casting wouldn't be strong enough for that. So anyway, it's more strong enough, but you can see that where I've recessed this in and so on. So, it's a proper replica of what was there. So that was just one of the bits. So, and then the cable we went off, we used this cable to go off to have one manufactured. But I had to send the quadrant off because they have to fit the cable through this. You can't, this outer bit has to have the ends, the ferrules put on it, so you can't fit it to it, it's part of it. So yeah, that's it. Right, now we're on to gearbox mount. So that's a pattern gearbox mount, again off of the Maserati Coupe. This is the beginnings of the construction. So I'm using a piece of cardboard here just to sort of get that shape there. Then I cut my bit of steel plate out, and then I've done this piece, so you can see that's going to mirror that. So that's the beginnings of shaping this sort of funny loopy piece. And then here we are, we're making the loops up, I'm forming them up here. You see how I'm holding it on the bench and putting the shapes into it, getting the forming these shapes up. And there you go, there's my finished piece. That's the original, that's my one. So yeah, identical. And that's with the cotton reel mounts, which you'll have see some more of this stuff in a clutch replacement video that I've got coming up at some point. So there you go, that's original, that's mine. There's the bobbins, the cotton reel bobbins for the mounts. So yeah, I reckon that's good enough, don't you? I don't reckon anyone will know the difference in that. Well, you will, because I told you now. So yeah, that's the finished article. That's it in place, just to, you know, test it to see that it all fits right, and it does. And now we're onto this anti-roll bar link. So there's drop links, and then they have to fit onto this part here. So again, bit of the old cardboard 80s design. So made a pattern in cardboard, then I've started roughing out this bit of plate that I've got. There's the finished article. So that's the factory one, that's my one, and I've, you know, drilled all the holes in the right place and so on. So there's the two items. Yeah, looking nice there, aren't they? So again, yes, so you wouldn't know, you know, that mine's a replica, not a real. Of course it is real. Now we're on to these rear stay supports that go under the back axle, sort of ties the chassis to the back of the car, sort of strengthener. Early cars didn't have them, I've been informed recently, but all the stuff I'm working on does, and ours one should have it. The one with a kink in it is off the Maserati Coupe, so actually, although it's painted, it shouldn't be at this stage because we had to straighten it, but that's a different story, won't get into that. That's why mine's a different angle to it, because I'm doing mine without that kink in it. These are the sleeves I had to turn down on the lathe, then they obviously go in the ends here. You can see there, well, I've got sleeves in there, but I haven't welded them on yet. Tack welded into place just to, you know, offer it up to get it to fit. You see here we are, we're fitting it, we're trial fitting it, making sure that our sleeves are in the right place, making sure all angles are right, and then so I can mark up to do the rear sleeves. So we're doing it to our car. So there's our sleeves going in, there's new sleeves there, and here we have some in place, all welded on, sleeves all in and so on, so done. Close-up picture of seeing the sleeves down inside it and so on. Oh, someone's after me, someone wants me. Who's that? Brownies are ready to pick up for the other one. How about that? How exciting. Right, these are finished articles, all powder coated by Gary in what I call the thin powder coating. So it's a lot like Kefos they used to use, which is the sort of thing they used to dip them in. They look factory. Here's some close-ups of them. So you wouldn't know, would you? You wouldn't know they're not, you know, well, which one of them is the original and which one's my one, you know, job to tell in it. So they're just about right. I reckon they're fine. Oh, lovely Maserati service sign. That was at Padova. That's probably still in Padova, the price it would have been. I don't expect anyone bought it. But that's pretty, isn't it? Isn't that a nice thing? Okay, onto floors. We had to make floors for it. Remember, I've talked about this. So here's the beginning of forming up a floor. That's a rear. That's the rear. So this is the sort of area where the rear spring hanger goes. So these are a bit elaborate because they have these slightly funny shapes here. That was just, you know, roughing one out really. And there's using a bit of masking paper and little magnets to hold it in place whilst I sort of check and take patterns and so on. And this paper is quite useful because you can move it to where you want it to be. So that was just sort of roughing out patterns. So here's one going together with the swage lines in it as they should be, and yeah, we're laying it out to cut some more. That's it going into the car. There's the rear spring that I was saying about, rear spring hanger. These are inboard in these cars because, as I said, they've got this sort of step-down chassis design. This is the seat mount here and here. There's the rear seat mounts. So your front seat goes there, so you're almost sitting the back on them things, aren't you? So far slung back. That's looking from underneath. You can get the sort of picture of what we got. Looking from underneath but looking forward, so there you go. You can see we haven't got a front floor pan in yet because you can see the pedals hanging down. There we are. So that's the rear floors installed at this point. They're all done and I've put them in primer. And that's front floor pans out of the car before they're fitted. You can see the swages, they go in the opposite direction to the rears. And there we go, installed, welded in. I've used some masks, I masked it all off whilst I was painting it. And here we are with this black rubberized coating that I use. So they're looking very good. They're smart. I like them. Pleased with them. And some more pictures of them. Yeah, I reckon they're all right. I reckon they look nice. So that's them. Now these have to be tied into the fiberglass that's there. So we have to use a lot of fiberglass around here to sort of tie it all in. Although they're welded in, then to stop the weather seeping underneath and getting into them, I had to fiberglass it all up as well. So that's done. All 4 floor pans in and then tied into the fiberglass. Looking good. There's our gearbox mount. So yeah, that's looking good. Just in the workshop, I was obviously moving it around. Got a 308 in front of it, a silver one. I think that one left to live in Australia. And this one, I think that's in the UK still. That's an Indy V8 I was doing a bit of work on for somebody. Trial fitting badges up, you can see there. And this is the customer picking it up and off for the paint shop. So this was after the initial dry build. Now what I was hoping for was it'd come back from the paint shop with all the parts to fit to it. So I've trial fitted a few bits, but there's lots of more trim that needs to go on it. Here we go, suitable tow car. Always use a suitable tow car, I say. Yeah, and that's it returning a little while later. All in body colour, looked absolutely stunning. You know, very exciting to see it back. And as I say, always use a suitable tow car. Right, there we are, it's back. Doesn't it look good? That's looking lovely. So first thing, got a Maserati badge on it. You know, you've got to get that on there quick, haven't you? Making sure it looks nice. Here we are. So it's back. It is looking good. Oh, and here's Dinah Dawes sitting on one, isn't it, at the motor show? Right, this is looking at some of the sort of errant problems with trim, trying to work out what we have and haven't got. I think there were bits we're missing. So starting up the fitting process, lights going in and so on, just to give it its face back. There's our Maserati badge on. These are some trim clips. I had to manufacture these. So I'm making these trim clips. These hold the side sills on. These were pattern ones off the Maserati car. We didn't have any, so this is starting to make them. So even these are a bit involved, just making these little clips. You know, this is where the time goes, making stuff like that. There's our lovely Becker. That was all installed. This is doing the fans up. So this is the second stage. So the first thing is get them all blasted and cleaned up, because this bit's steel. And then I get Pete to polish the aluminium blades up. Before I can even do that, I had to modify these blades a bit because they had some damage on them. So I had to trim them down a bit to get them about right. Right, now this is our dash that we've been on about. You know, I was wobbling on about it. And so I shall continue wobbling on about it. Now, it had been hacked out to put a big 8-track in there. You can see to the point where they'd even cut through and gone into the area where the clock goes. That's what the speaker grill should look like, which was missing. This is on the Red Spider. So that's what we're missing, one of them. That was just for illustration purposes, trying to find it. And this is in the Red Spider. That's it. So this is an example of what we're trying to do. You see there's no clock in this picture. And it's also, the dials are on the right because it's a right-hand drive car. So this is a different car. That's the 8-track thing that used to be in there. Although it might even be a cassette player. I think it's an 8-track, I'm sure. It got the screen in. Again, you need to get the screen in before I could do some of the other work on it. Right, this is starting to make the A-pillar trims. So I'm running it through the English wheel, get a bit of shape onto it. So there you go, just running this bit of brass through the English wheel. And there we go, to the beginning of it. So this is how I did them. I sort of put some shape in and did a fold, and then I pulled them round. And there's actually a video just about making these, if you want to look up and see that. There's gutter trims. That's this cutting the bits to suit, and there's a pattern for a gutter trim. They're starting to put the folds into them, and there we are, sort of beginning to make them take shape. So, and that's it when it's folded over. This was repairing one of the door handles, which was damaged. I had to set it up on, I say set it up on the mill, but that's not the mill, that's on the vise and doing it by hand. But anyway, there you go. But yeah, I had to put this little bit of thread in it. So this is sort of holding up the Becker to show how much gap we've got around everything, what we're up against. Now this is aluminium dash. Funny thing is that the Maserati Coupe's got a fiberglass dash, which is like it's the same model. Right, so here we are. So I'm getting something in there to sort of hold in and mounting it up where it can. So I'm using the mounting holes that the actual aperture trim that goes around the dash goes on. So I'm using that to pick up on it. And there we are looking on the Maserati Coupe's dash, just for purposes of seeing how to set it up and where it goes next to the clock. So that's it. That's starting to sort of fit it up. So you can see the steel behind here, and then there's the aluminium with the dashboard. And then I had to let in pieces to our steel insert. I've spot welded them on to bring the level of it up. So although this bit is all bonded in and then eventually is fitted in with by these trims being held in, I wanted it to be level so that when the dash is trimmed, it didn't have a sort of valley going down into where the thing goes. This is the beginning of making these little trims go around the fuel filler flap. So this is an original one. This is one I'm starting to make up. I think that was just a trial run. I don't think that worked very well, that one. I think it starts looking like something, but it wasn't quite right. I think I had to make a former up for that. A couple of different ones I've done, and then one original one. But they're all different. They don't fit each car. They're sort of, again, they're slightly different. Although this isn't the Silver Coupe. This is another one. This is a 3.7. That's a filler flap that I made, and all the arrangements. I think I was trying it on mine to get an idea of it. So that's the filler flap I made. This is onto the silver one. So we're looking at the differences. That's off the Maserati Coupe. That's the silver one, obviously on the silver car. That's our speaker aperture. On the top of the dash, and this is looking inside the dash, showing how I've bonded this on. So one of the things this thing had to do is it also had to tie in and carry where the rear view mirror goes onto. So I had to put, it needs to be strong to hold that back, or otherwise it will vibrate about. Here we are, the beginning of making door check straps. So this is our pattern, and there's a bit of steel we're using. I roughed it out, chopped it out, and there. So we got our rough pieces there, and I've drilled the holes in for where we got to. So the front hole, the one on its own, is the pivot point that goes on the A post, and these 3 holes are to do with how you set them up and where all the buffers go that end up inside the door. So this is the thing that stops the door going too far open when you open it and then folding up on the bodywork. Top one's one of mine, bottom one's one of mine, and the original in the middle, and it's showing how I've made this dimple, this sort of little pimple bit that has to sort of work on it to slow it down as it opens. So there we go. We're looking at mine. To the left is mine, original in the middle, and then the one on the right again is another one I'm making. And we're just looking at these dimples to see how I've replicated them. And here's the tooling I made up for replicating. I used an old cold chisel. And I made a little piece of steel up that you could then drift it into. So I warmed them up. I did it by heating them up and then smashing them into there, and it also split it slightly to create that look. So exactly how replicates what it is. And there you can see the sort of buffer that it goes inside the door, bolts inside the door. So there we can see what it's going to do on the door. A bit more about the fan. That's it being masked up. Ready for the powder coating in the middle, or painting, whatever Gary did with it. We're looking at some courtesy lights that I was manufacturing, and manufacturing is a bigger word for it, but yeah, we were, I think I used reflectors off an old crap Jaguar we've got here, and we've managed to find these chrome bits, and then the other bit you can buy new, the actual other bit. And there we are, so the car looking a bit better, starting to take shape, things are going on, the bumper's back on. And it is only trial fitted, that bumper came on and off a few times. Just looking at it on the ramp from the front, looking very pretty, and there's the select jig. There's our check straps to the left. Top of the picture is 2 different types of hinge pins, and I'm trying to decide which one to replicate, and then there's my bits of steel ready to make them. And this is the beginning of the operation of making them. So I've settled on making them with this style. So I've started off by putting these points on the end, and then using a parting off bit to make this piece that an E-clip goes into there, and then obviously I've got to drill the hole the other end. Got all the bits for the E-clip done and all the points. Here we are, we've cut them all down and done all the drillings for the split pins that go on there. And that's an original one at the bottom, and there's my 4 hinge pins, E-clips, and with split pins fitted at the top. Right, to hold the fan on, you have a left-hand threaded bolt. I think I called it a nut in one of the videos before, but anyway, it's a bolt. And so it does up, counterclockwise, as it were. And the idea is so it doesn't unwind itself when the engine's running. And we were missing it. It wasn't there. So I bought this bit of hexagonal stock in, and I bought a counterclockwise left-handed thread die in. This is the die to cut the thread on it. And there's the washer. We had to replicate that as well. So that's it going in the lathe, showing what I've got to have to do. That's on the Wilson, the big lathe. And you can see here where the threads look round the wrong way, you know, the pattern, because I'm holding the pattern up against it. That's it, just taking it down to do the shoulder and so on. That's on the Wilson. You can see the big Wilson. There's the Titanic up on the wall there, which I made that as a school project many years ago from my eldest. And here we are, we're cutting the thread on it. So I haven't parted it off yet, or done the drilling for the lock wire that goes in it. So I'm using the whole thing as one big piece of this hex bar. I'm using it in one piece so I can hold it still. There we are. So we can see how I've cut the thread on it, and that's done. So effectively we've got what becomes the head of a nut there, and then I'm drilling it through on the Bridgeport so that we can use lock wire on it. There's the Bridgeport. Got it all set up on there. There's the original bolt on the left hand side of the picture. We've got some bits on drill bits and things just for scale, just on top of this surface plate, so you can see what's going on. There's my new bolt on the right hand side, and there's the washer on the left hand side, and my bit of stock that I'm going to make a new washer from. And there we are. I'm drilling out the centre of it on the Bridgeport washer, and then I'm turning it down on the Myford lathe to get it round. This is a bit difficult, but it did work. And there's the original Maserati part on the left and my one on the right. There you go, same left and right. There's mine done. And here's a close-up of it. So yeah, that turned out all right. That's a good job. It's on there and it works, doesn't it? And here we are with the fan housing, so you can, with the new fan for the car, and you can see what it's going to look like. And there's a close-up of it fitted. So you know, you get the idea. There's nothing wrong with that, is it? And there's my hands, workers' hands. These are the little trims that go up on the top of the door by where the quarter light opens. Now we had one side, but we're missing the one for the other, so I was making some test pieces and, you know, trying to see what we got. There's one made, and then I bought these little brass screws in, and then took the tops of them off a bit, and then I got a silver solder them on. So that's an original one. In the middle of the shot is the original, which has been chrome plated, and there's mine that I'm replicating, and I'm ready to silver solder them on. That's them with a bit of flux on them, and on some old heat bricks, and there they are, they're silver soldered on them. And that's trial fitting it onto the door top. So the upper part of the picture is the door top, which would be on the passenger side of the car, and then this door top would be on the driver's side of the car. And there's some close-up shots of it to show how it fits the contours nicely and so on. And there's some more shots of them against some other patterns and showing how different they are. So the ones on the top were off of a different set of door caps. And you see these little end bits are quite a different shape, aren't they, on those? They're very skinny. So they fit the door tops they came with, but they don't fit the other door tops. So it's just an example, again, you see showing the difference, and they're actually shorter by a fair bit. So you can't just grab a bit off one car and fit it on another. They all seem to be unique to them. That's it, trial fitted on the door, just to show what it does. And on the door top, bolted to the door. A nice picture of Roma. The silver Mistral in the top right of the picture, and top left the 3.7 coupe that I've got to do, which is going to be in gold, so it'll complement the silver one well. Door check straps, but showing this other one that I got off another door and how much longer it is, which is a bit odd, isn't it? But again, shows they're all different. There's my start right, which is the bandsaw I've got, which is lovely, which makes me think of them shoes you used to get when you were a kid at school, start right shoes. That's cutting out the on the start right, cutting out, roughing out a bit of steel to make these door check straps, and this is showing it heated up and clamped down, and then using this cold chisel to form that dimple. So I've had to warm them up and then chase that in there quite quickly whilst it was hot before it cooled down. Bonnet catches before they went off for plating, so they needed to be plated, but they're just, that's why they look a bit rough at the minute. And I was just sorting out, the springs were all missing and they didn't work and they were all buggered up anyway, so sorting them out. Oh, here's my lamps before I restored them, the ones at the beginning of the film. And there they are before we restored them. There's this thing on the tailgate. This is this box that sort of holds all the catch mechanism in. I had to make one anyway. I can't remember if it's for this car or for another one. I think it might have been for another one actually, but I did make it. So that's forming it up and then it all spot welded together, all fabricated sheet. This is, do you remember these, making these little door locator catches? So this is the tooling and making these up. There's a film about these. You should go and watch the film really rather than, you know, listen to this, but you can get the idea. That's an original one. That's my former. This is a bit of brass plate and starting to form one up. I know that one's split, so that's just a test piece. But it's showing that it's going to do the job, showing it on the B post where it's locate. And there's my tooling I made from doing the dimples for where the screws have got to go through, those countersunk screws. And that's showing the screws going in and effectively forming the countersinks as they go. And there's one trial fitting it on the car. And here's a sort of bit of the process. You know, there's two original ones in that picture which are chrome plated, and two of my sort of trial run test pieces. And this is showing the forming process of how you start chasing it in. You have to anneal it, and then you do another one. So it's showing the sort of 3 stages of how you chase it. You know, of how much you do it each time, how much you can chase the metal before it splits, and you have to re-anneal it. On those catch boxes on the back, you have these plungers, and these sort of, when you push the button to release the tailgate, it allows it to pop up a bit so you can get your fingers under it and lift underneath it and lift it. So this is making the plungers up that go in that catch box. So I'm turning them. This is an original one. On the right hand side in my hand is an original, on the left side is one I've made, and then you can see one set up in the Myford lathe, and I'm cutting the thread in it. And this is what they look like when they're done. So these two I've made with the little rubber buffers on them and the washers underneath it, and then they've got a screw holding it down. And this one in the middle here is an original one. And then this piece on the far right, the picture, is the beginnings of the thing that holds the spring, where they sit down into. And there's a sort of, you can see where the spring goes and so on. So it's a bit more, shows how it does. And here's sort of a finished set. So I fabricated 2 up, and there's an original one with leather cover on it. There's some of my rubber buffers on the door just to illustrate stuff I make really. But you can see on here you've got the rubber buffers which are sprung loaded, and then this little button here, this stainless steel looking button, that's a courtesy light switch to allow you to operate the courtesy, because this is the bottom of this catch box has a little light. Steering column, I had to take all that apart and refurbish it accordingly and sort out all the wiring for the horn, which there's a film just about the horn and the indicators and everything else that will be dealt with. So these are just for reference, these photos, just really so I can remember how to reassemble it. And this is on the bottom of that steering column, it hangs all the pedals, so I'm having all the pedals apart and sorting them out. And this is the steering lock mechanism, so I'm taking all that apart so we can get it crackle finishing the crackle black. Christmas time. McGrath Maserati's Christmas cards and some toy Mistrals. Someone's Christmas present. Here's some CAD plating, or zinc plating done and returned, various parts. Now these needed some work. These are the door catches. I had to make up some stuff for them. This is the exhaust heat shields that I made, so there's an original there, and then you can see the one I'm making. I've got it on the bench here set up on the manifold to sort of make sure it's all going to fit and do what it has to do. So there you go, so I'm making that up. I made a little series of them up because we're missing them on a few different cars at the same time. It makes, makes sense to make a couple extras. Another part we had to make, these are all to do with the throttle linkage. and these are sort of throttle stops effectively. So these all had to be made. I had to buy hex bar in and turn it down again, and then put threads on them. So these are only tiny little things. These are 10mm heads, so they're 6mm thread, and then these are the little sort of clamps that they go on. This is all to do with the throttle linkage. Underneath the trim that's on the air scoop on the front of the bonnet, you have this perforated piece. And another thing, it was missing. So I had to buy this perforated steel in, and then I had to cut it to shape, fold it, and then I had to stretch it round because it has to follow a contour as it goes. So I used the stretcher to move it around. This is an example of what we've got to do to make this speaker grill. This is plastic, but we've got to replicate that somehow. So here's our throttle linkage. This is all stuff I've had to make. So the top bit I had to make, I had to buy in the throttle stop, these little ball joints. I had to buy those in. I had to cut some threads on that bit of rod, and then these are different things to do with the throttle quadrant that I've refurbished, and the new little nuts I've made with the little stops on them. The top air scoops on the very, very leading edge of the bonnet, or not the leading edge because it's the top end, anyway. They were missing, so I had to make them. Now these are made of 5 pieces, so this is them in the raw brass plate before they're chrome plated. This is showing it from underneath the bonnet, how they secure and how they fit, and the little tangs that hold them in place. So this is looking from inside the bonnet. Here we are looking at how it was constructed. So the chrome one, the lower one I'm using as a pattern, but it was too deep, so I had to make it, adjust them accordingly, and then that's what they're assembled from. So they're effectively 5 parts. 2 little tangs for location, and then you've got the top piece, which is this very top piece. You've got to form a sort of secondary part that goes underneath that, which is sort of like the under part of that, where it clips onto the bonnet. And then you've got the lower, very lower sort of return, and then that's to be folded and shrunk round. All clamped together on a little sort of, trying to hold it together whilst I'm still soldering it together. And you see I'm using the binding wire to hold it in place. We made some binding wire on one of the films, didn't we? Finished article. And the top one's off another car, but you can see how much deeper the top one is to my one. And so there's no way you could just fit them to the car. They won't fit at all, So as I say, it's all bespoke, all has to be made to the car. And if you get something, if you're lucky enough to find a second-hand one, it won't fit anyway. So you might as well just make them. So there you go, that's it. These actuator sort of little gear stick type things, which control those flaps on the side of the wings. So there's an original one with the original knob, the aluminium knob, like a gear knob sort of thing. So there's some aluminium stock I bought in, and then there's a piece of steel tube that I bought in to make this tube, and then we'll see what we have to do. So here we are. So cut the tube to size. I've got to cut threads in the end of it, but they're different size. From memory, I think might be a 5mm at the top end and a 6mm at the bottom end, but the bottom end you have to weld these nuts on. For some reason, I think I don't know, that's the way the factory did it. I don't actually know why they did it that way, but I replicated it because this is what we do. We try and replicate it. So I've made some control rods up, or started to. And then here we are in the Myford lathe showing an original control knob, the knob that goes on the top of it, and then showing the aluminium stock set up in the Myford ready to cut it to shape. And here we are. So I'm roughing it out here. I'm roughing it out and getting the shape right, and then turning it down to allow for this threaded bit on the end. And so that's what I did. I roughed it out, got it all to the right shape, turned the end down to where I was going to put the thread on it, and then I ground up an actual parting off bit. It's not really a parting off bit, but I ground down this bit to become a parting off bit that at the same time would put the radius on the top of these. So there I'm parting it off to do that. But there's an error here, and we'll cover that in a minute. And it's parting it off and taking it off lovely. It looks beautiful. But then you see here it is. Here's one that I parted off. There's the one I've parted off, and then I'm making another one to match it. But the problem comes here is putting the thread on that. So you'll see the second one I make, I put the thread on it before I take it off the machine. You see, so there's one in the machine having a thread made. There's an original one there, short of the thread because that was a damaged one, and there's another one I've done. But the one I did make before, that it was difficult to hold it to cut the thread in it. So it's a lot easier to cut the thread and keep the thread true if you're doing it whilst you're on the lathe. So you can see here, so I've put the threads on before I part them off, and then this time I'm parting it off with, you know, say, once the thread's on there. So that's it. And they're showing some of the swarf, some of the material that had to come off to make them. So, you know, that all had to be removed. So it made a bit of a mess. But that's how much you have to take off to make things. And that's them on the surface plate with my safety glasses for scale, and you can see what we've got. Now I used one of these as original, and I think I reused that, and because I made 2 sets of these whilst I was about it, because I needed to make them for 2 cars. So I made 2 sets of them. And there's my little control knobs finished. They look lovely, all spun up. The sort of, you know, that sort of looks like an old record, doesn't it, with the lines in it. Now I thought about getting these anodized, but I think because they're inside the car, they'll probably be fine, but we could get them anodized. Another little job on the lathe. Now this was, I bought some stainless steel coach bolts in to modify them because I needed the button head. And here I am, I've got them in a jig that I made to cut a thread in, to cut a slot in them to enable them to be, you know, turn into sort of effectively screws. So here you go, here it is, and you can see the saw blade's going to go through this jig and cut the slot in it. And there you can see what we're making, these 4 little screws in stainless steel. They're these sort of very shallow dome heads. And then there's the coach bolt that we bought in stainless to make them from. So, you know, I didn't want to make them from nothing. I thought we'll get a starting point, and that's the, you know, I couldn't buy these in. And what these are for the door catch on the Maserati, but they were missing, 1 set were missing. So all that effort just because they've been lost, you know. Gutter trim there, all hand formed in brass, and the top of the windscreen A-pillar trim. Here we are, we're looking at them again from the side. We can see our A-pillar trim, and we can see our gutter trim. And there we go, again looking across it, you can see the, you know, the nice contour of it, following the contour of the roof. And here we have our actuators trial fitted up to show what they did. So that's showing what you'd see well, you wouldn't see this inside the car, but this is looking from the inside of the car effectively, because these control knob goes inside the car, and then that's what it connects to, that flap, but you can't see that flap in situ. And that's looking at an original one, and then my replica. And here we are, we are using a set of tweezers here, jeweler's tweezers, and they're lock wired in place with some of my binding wire, not lock wired, binding wire. And then I'm silver soldering the little tangs on the locate these, and this is showing the tang silver soldered on. What you get, this is looking on the surface table, and that's the silver solder sort of blobbed on there before I fired it up. Another thing that had to be made was grill aperture that goes on the bottom of the windscreen on the scuttle panel. And this was a particularly vexing part to make because it has a sort of shallow D section to it. So what I had to do is I had to buy D section in and hand form what I needed, because it's not just a D. I couldn't buy in what I needed basically. So this is showing it sort of going together and trial fitting it up, and that's the finished article, and then that's the grill that it goes round. That's it on the car, trial fitted. So it looked very nice, but it took a lot of work to get it there. This is the jig I made for assembling it. So here we are assembling it, and then I will then put all the locating fixings onto it as well. So that's my jig, and there's the oxyacetylene torch going whilst I'm doing this silver solder. There's my jig without a piece on it, just to show what it is. And there's the item trial fitted to the car, the finished item before it's chromed. So there's mine on the car in brass, and there's the one I was copying, and there's mine in brass and the chrome plated one that I was copying. And this is the underside of it, showing the locating tangs and the recess that I had to mill in the back of it. So here we are, this sort of shows the D section I buy in, which is actually what they call keel board. It's actually for the bottom of a keel on a boat, and it's showing what I was having to produce with it. Speaker grills, I had to buy in some suitable pierced steel to sort of give me the grill effect. So I was able to order from this firm that made these grills up. So they were able to make that part of it, and then I had to form the sides. So that's our sort of product as it come in. You know, it's quite expensive to get them to tool up to do that and make that, but it was, you know, it was the only way we could do it. It was very difficult to find one. And here we are. This is my former and forming the edges, so knocking the edges round. That's my former and where I've knocked the edges round. And so here we are. Here's one of my pieces on the service plate, and then above it is the original plastic one. Now, we couldn't find one of them for love nor money. I just couldn't find one. Couldn't work out what car it's off of. But having gone to all that effort, I now found out what it's from. It's actually off of a Fiat 23S Coupe. So, but finding one for a Fiat 23S Coupe is no mean feat anyway. So here we are. Here's a couple of items made up. So that's our speaker grille before it's finished and painted, just trial fitted in place on top of the dash, and I refurbished all the rear view mirror at this point. The Mistral has a quirky little mirror that sits on top of the dash, which you can't see anything out of. It's a bit of a silly design, but there you go. It's not for me to question what they did, but there we go. You can see it. So you don't really see the speaker grille when it's behind the mirror, but it needs to be right. And there's our lovely Becker fitted. So this is showing the speaker grille with the locating tangs and the little screw, you know, little studs that you'd screw it on with. So that's before it gets powder coated, and that's it trial fitted. Here we have the drop links that I had to form up and then drill holes in for split pins. So these go with those that bar. These are the drop link bars, and they go with that sort of saddle plate that I showed making. This is them in situ with the saddle plate I made, or bracket. That's our speaker grille when it's finished in black, and that's it in situ. It later, before it's finally fitted, had a little bit of black material stuck underneath it, so you couldn't see the speakers underneath it, which were all chrome and weird looking, purely because they're modern. You know, that's what they look like, but you can't see them because it's got this lovely bit of black material underneath it, which is much like they did with the originals. Steering column finished in black crackle and ready for assembly. There we are. That's it, all looking pretty. And the pedals done in not a crackle finish, in a low sheen satin finish. This is it all installed in the car, and you can see this is just the beginning. You know, there's the wiring loom in. You know, I had to put that in, and you know, you get the idea of the actual enormity of this job when you see things like this. This is where you'd start on one of those trims for the fuel filler flap. That's my former I made to enable it to make them. You know, I needed something to sort of get the shape, you know, to work them out. Now here was another job that had to be done. Where the pedals connect up to the master cylinders for brake and clutch, none of the connection pieces were there. They'd all been lost. So I had to make all of these up out of a box section steel. And here we are. So I needed a 4-jaw chuck to hold them in, because it's a square. You can't hold it in a 3-jaw chuck. So it wasn't until I got my new lathe in that I was able to actually make these. And then you see, so what I'm doing here is you can see the top, these then marry up with these secondary pieces, so they sort of actuate on them. And then you see on the bottom here is the beginning of forming up this piece on the right. So I'm making 2 sets of all of this. So I put the threads on both ends, and then I, you know, cut it in half and then machine it down. So it's just trying to fabricate things in an efficient manner. So the shiny ones are all my stuff because it's all out of bright new steel, and the duller ones are originals that I'm using as a pattern. It was old Bridgeport, doing some operation to do with them on there. And here we go, the pedals in the sunshine, in the low winter sun by the looks of it. And you can see all the bits I've made just sort of sat on there, you know, and you see how they attach to the pedals, and then they're then attached to the corresponding clutch and brake master cylinders. There we are, there's the finished items. They look nice actually, they come out well, I was quite pleased with them. Here they are fitted to the master cylinders, so you can get an idea of how they work and what they do. So, you know, this is your brake master cylinder in the black, and you can see this piece has to screw onto the end of it, and then it has to have a clevis pin with a split pin to locate it, or to hold it in place, to locate it. This so it actuates on the end of the brake pedal. And then this is your clutch slave cylinder, and then the gurling actuator rod that comes with it, where actually the Maserati piece connects to that, so it's a bit simpler than the brake. This is some close-ups of them. So in here you see they've got this tiny dreading, and then you have a little piece of I think it's like a needle roller out of a needle roller bearing, and that just sits in there at a slightly jaunty angle, and that locates it when you do it up on the brake pedal, so it doesn't twist, you know, so you're not relying on it just being done up tight to not twist. So yeah, I have to replicate that and find some little needle rollers. I can't even remember where I found them now, but I found them somewhere. Some nice parts ready for chrome plating. So you can see it's all ready to go, all the stuff I've been making. Another nice picture of it all, you know, and it shows the amount of effort, you know, there's weeks of work in that lot. And this is a sort of close-up of trims that do the fuel filler flap. Anyway, there you go, just to sort of show what they do and how they fit and so on. Now these are the aluminium parts that go around the rear windows. Back in the day you'd be able to buy a very shallow D section, aluminium section that was heavily annealed, and you'd be able to sort of form it into the shape you want and twist it. Well, I bought some D section and I couldn't get it to move. It was just too tough to move. I tried annealing it, it wouldn't have it. I ended up cutting these out of sheet, so I straightened one out to get the sort of boomerang shape of what it'd be like. I cut them out of sheet. I can't remember how, it might have been even 4mm sheet. So I cut them out like that, and then I got them all sort of shaped up nicely to how they should be, you know, and then I had to put the contour on them. So then I bolted them to a piece of wood and hand filed them. And it was a day of just filing for each one, you know, a full, it wasn't even an 8-hour day, it was one of them long days. Probably did about 10 hours of just hand filing to get that right. Well, that's what it took. And I couldn't do it any other way because we didn't have any other thing. And that's it on the car. You can see what it's got to do, how it's got to follow these contours. So once I filed it all up and got that D shape in it, then I had to then bend it into shape to go around the window. So it's a right sort of a job that was. Now, it really was a difficult job. Not one I'd repeat in a hurry. A mate of mine in Italy said, oh, we do plenty of that D section, we can get you some of that. You know, I thought, oh, I'm not so sure you can. But he told me that in a message when he saw my Facebook post about this in the middle of lockdown. Well, I couldn't get to Italy to get it if I wanted to. Which actually I would like to go. I love my trips to Italy, so it'd have been good to go and see him. So that's it all filed, you know, all hand filed up to shape with the contours in it. This is a pretty shot, isn't it? We've got Roma on the ramp, you know, Fiat's answer to 60s GT driver, and Maserati's answer in front of it. I mean, that is a good shot, isn't it? That's quite a nice thing. Open the door and see them in the morning. So here's my two window apertures all done with the drillings where they fit, because you have to put drillings in there and then countersink them, so it's all ready to go, all trial fitted to the car, ready to go. They have to then go off and be polished, so then I sent them off for polishing. And you see I'm trial fitting it with the window and everything, just to make sure it's all going to work, which is a lot of work, you know, it's a lot of work. You see how it fits inside with the rubber on and everything. So all that effort just to get them right, you know, all because it'd been lost. Now I'm clamping down a piece of aluminium on the mill, and the reason being that for another part we were missing, which was another piece that goes inside the car, and we didn't have it. It's a bit of section. It's this profile. So you can see in this picture the lower bit is the profile I'm trying to replicate, and then I had to buy in this big piece of angle. Aluminium angle, which had to be deep enough so that it would actually allow me to shape it into this outer shape. Again, if you could buy that profile, it'd be fine. You know, I sort of joke that it's on the corner of a bar, isn't it? You know, I bet, you know, if you go to the cafe in Italy and it's an older cafe, you'll have some of that capping around the edge of the bar, won't you? But there you go. I couldn't get it, so I had to make it. So that's showing it on the mill, and you see I'm sort of milling the rough shape of it to get the sort of roughing it out there. Managed to mill it down that much on the, you know, on the Bridgeport, and there you go, the body file, and it's attached to a piece of wood on my freestanding vise there. And then I start having to file in the profile by hand. So here we go, you see a close-up of it getting the shape, and then some of the filings that are coming off, you know, on the floor here to show how much material I've moved. And so there's the an original one and my one. So I not only did I have to file it in shape, I then had to set the edge on the very corner there. I had to sort of hook it round. So I had to make up something. I can't remember what I did now, but I did something and then bashed it round to do that. So the one on the left is the original, because you can see the drillings for it, and the one on the right is my one that I'm making to replicate it. So there you go, perfect. Now, you wouldn't know it's not factory. And then that's showing a piece of aluminium I had to buy in to make it. And I had to buy a few meters of it because I couldn't, they wouldn't sell just a small bit of it. And that's it. So there was hours and hours in that just to make that bit. But it's perfect. You wouldn't know. And there's just showing on the ridge port some of the material that had to be removed. And there we are. We set it up on my Lavazza coffee. It's like a few cups of coffee to keep me going whilst I was doing that bit of work, or maybe it's just that I have too much coffee and that's what makes me so bloody mad. But it took yes, I don't know. Yeah, it took that sort of caffeine rush to have the enthusiasm to do that job, but I did it. Pre-polishing, so this is all parts I've made pre-going off to Peter for polishing. So going from the left, we have the original sill trim part, and that's sort of it's carpet capping, I guess, and then my one, and then the step sills covers, which are stainless steel, and then we've got 2 aluminium pieces there to go above the door. Those are made. And then we've got 2 pieces here, the next 2 along. These are what hold the real glass in. These are original. I was just getting them polished to sort them out because they were all horrible and got messed up. And then the top part of the picture is the D sections that I made, which match those other ones that go above the door, but they go around the rear window. And obviously that's the window that those other 2 bits would hold in place. And then we've got an original kick plate for going inside the car, plus one. I made another one whilst I was at it for the other project. And then on the right hand side here, we have some A-post covers that I made in aluminium because they were missing as well. So another thing missing. So the little cutout on those is where the check strap goes, and the round hole is where the courtesy light switch goes. This is a photo of the return of chrome items once they've been done. So they look lovely. And the very first YouTube film we did was a couple of days after this, which was all about making these trims. So probably going back a year ago now. But yeah, there's the little trims that locate those little D section rubbers that locate the door when you shut it. There's my fuel filler. I mean, it transforms the stuff, doesn't it? Once you get some shininess on it, it does look good. Anyway, there's a lovely video about all that if you want to watch it, and it talks about all of them and shows me fitting them and where they go. So these are our scoops for the top of the bonnet, and there they are, just sort of trial fitting them in place, and so on. Lovely Maserati sign that I saw at Padova. It's there every year because it's so expensive, no one can afford it. These cufflinks are what you'd get if you bought a 5000 GT or you were a special customer of Maserati. They give you these lovely sort of 60s, slightly sort of, pop arty looking, sort of, yeah. Anyway, these lovely cufflinks, I like them. I think they're really nice. And here's assembling this is all the heater controls and also does the enrichment device. So I just covered this part with leather, and I'm showing what it looks like whilst it's assembled. This is our fuel filler flap and the trim I made for it. All chrome plated and fitted. These the bits unwrapped from Peter, all polished up. Now don't they look lovely? It really is. It's the jackdaw in me. I get excited about this stuff. And there's the apertures fitted to the car, these aluminium apertures, and on all these bulldog clips are where I'm starting to put leather on the B post top, fitting leather to it. You see I'm fitting the leather trim, gluing it on. Rear windows that, the sort of slightly pop out rear windows with the original parts refitted to them, bonded on with the screws so that I can fit them to the car, and all polished up by Peter. A-post trims that I made fitted. This is the little cappings that go on there. There's the stainless steel sill strips, and then my aluminium piece, the sort of carpet capping bit. This is the making of these things for the spark plug leads, these retainers. So it's just showing the beginnings of making it, and then turning down a bit of steel on the Colchester, and then so I can make these little spectacle bits. So that's making them all up. That's the bits in kit form. This was a radiator support that I had to make because the original one that we had was too short. I don't know why. It must have been, I think it's because the radiator had been repaired and they'd altered the position of this lug. So, you know, if I put the original stay on it, it made it too far back. This is showing what these do. Oh, because they're not spark plug ones, are they? These are for the lower radiator hose. There are some spark plug ones that look like them. Anyway, that's them. So that's an original one at the top. It's 3 that I made. Again, they're identical, aren't they? That's showing the grommet that goes with them. This was a little repair I had to do on the little water outlet, which was all corroded up the end of it. So I turned down a bit of steel to sort of insert in there and then brazed it on. And that's the broken off, you know, that's the nasty bit that I cut off. So that's showing how far it sleeves into there. So it does a proper repair on it. If you look at the top of the picture, you see the spout sticking up, and you can see the brass where I brazed it. And this is after I lynched it all up. So it's a good repair. Here's the fan, all detailed with some exhaust manifolds detailed and a heat shield. This is actually for another car. This is for the Maserati Coupe, but yeah, that does look good, doesn't it? So there we go. That's what you get when you've refurbed. It's pretty much what I did on the other one. Fabricating some little wiring loom. Actually, no, these aren't wiring loom connectors. These are not connectors. Is the wrong word. These hold the petrol hoses in place. Another little job. The brackets that hold the coils in place were missing, and they have to carry these ballast resistors. So again, I had to make them. So that's a bit of steel where I pierced them out. So they have to be identical. So I bolted them together so they'd end up identical. But that's the original one in the shape that would hold the coil. That's what it would look like flattened out with the corresponding lugs and so on it. And there I'm starting to form it up to get it, yeah. So I've made it into the round shape it's got to be. And then here I'm chasing in these funny little press sort of almost sort of pressed in bits, and then they've got a thread cut in them. So I'm just sort of showing how I replicated that with a couple of punches, and then I cut a thread in it, and that's showing, you know, how it works, so you can bolt them onto it. So again, you wouldn't know this wasn't factory. And this was a lot of work, but there's one holding on the coil. There's an original one. Now you wouldn't know, it's not something that come from the factory. So that's them made. So the top one's Maserati's piece, or probably Magnum Morelli's piece, isn't it? And then there's my 2 that I made. Yeah, a lot of effort went into that. But you know, I didn't want to put just any old thing on there, and it wouldn't have a bracket to hold the ballast resistor either. That's my coil brackets. This is a pretty bit of advertising, isn't it, for Agip, the oil and petrol company. So there we are on a Spider, isn't it? I mean, that's that's quite cool, isn't it? There we are, all very 60s chic, isn't it? And then this is the sort of gold colour, the 3.7 coupe that I've got to do. I mean, that's slightly, you don't quite get the full effect there because it's in the shadow, but that's what it would look like. There's again period Agip advertising. You know, they chose to have Maseratis in them because you know, because they're bloody nice cars. That's why. Another Agip poster showing another Spider. This one's good, the Agip one, isn't it? So this is the same colour as a Spider we do, don't we? And though it's left-hand drive, it doesn't half look like that car, doesn't it? And I sort of joke, it's a guy who owns it, John, I'm joking that it's him there. I said, oh, you must bring your crash helmet, you know, if you're going to drive that car. Look at him. Quite why he's got a crash helmet on the open road, I don't know. But there we are. But yeah, it's very cool, isn't it? I like that picture. Perhaps I'll have to get one of these Agip soups when I you know, when I go down the petrol station. Actually, joking apart, there was a guy at Padova and he sells you know, this sort of petrol stuff, all these old signs and things, and he actually had an original 60s suit like this from one of these service stations, and he was wearing it for the whole duration of the show. It was great. It was quite funny. He did look good. I've got a picture of him somewhere. I said that's our slideshow. That took a while, didn't it? I expect you've all gone to sleep now, haven't you? Just like when I was doing history of art at college. I used to do this slideshow in the afternoon, and I used to fund my way through college. I was doing early morning cleaning, so I was up crack of dawn, well, actually before dawn I was up working, doing these cleaning jobs. And then I was at college all day, and then in the evenings I used to do cleaning as well. And then I was at the pub every night. So yeah, it was the history of art was you know, dim the lights and you know, and you know, and let's have a look at Caravaggio's work. And there I was off to sleep straight away. Silly sod. Anyway, art's loss is the old car's gain, perhaps, isn't it? The old car, because I'm now doing cars rather than art. But there we are. That's enough for tonight. Good night.
Baby, I can't make a move like a child, a star for love. I'll stay there as long as I have to. I'll cry a river of tears that flows to the sea. Baby, if you run away, baby, if you leave, in love with you, girl. You make me feel brand new. Come on, give it up to me. Let me take care of you. I know that your mama said I'm gonna make you